WNST, and of course the Redskins coming in next week, but it is a baseball week here. Luke Jones is at Oriole Park at Camden Yards all week. Obviously, the Orioles all in now, as we found out at 4 o'clock on Monday, but so are the Kansas City Royals, who were red hot till they got in here. A little walk-off on Monday night got the job done for the Birds, but certainly this guy has had a very topsy-turvy summer covering the Kansas City Royals as the beat reporter for MLB.com. He's one of our defending champs. He's here in town, hopefully having a crab cake or two amidst some of this baseball. But Jeffrey Flanagan, we've, you got a real pennant race going on there in Kansas City. And I know you and I talked maybe about 8 weeks ago, and we were talking about sell-offs of Moustakas and Hosmer and Kane. Not talking about that right now, right?
No, and actually, the front office has been pretty consistent with the theory that they were never really going to sell off unless they got, I think we mentioned it, 10, 15, 20 games under 500. If they were anywhere near sniffing a playoff spot, they were going to go all in, and they've certainly done that in the last week.
Well, the Orioles did the same thing to some degree. I don't know that all in. They would have never had the prospects to get a Sonny Gray or a Yu Darvish or some short-term rental other than Jeremy Hellickson. But the Orioles had a very similar circumstance, except we didn't have a parade here, Jeff. We didn't make it to the World Series at all and losing Game 7 to Bumgarner. The Royals fans have been treated to something special. Boy, the Orioles fans, I think a lot of people around baseball are very, very shocked at this strategy.
I agree. I fully expected them to move Britton, and it just with the state of their starting rotation over the last couple of years, it just would have made sense for me if I were in the Orioles front office to make a move now. But obviously they believe that they can still make a run at it. I think they're 3 games under as of Monday night. If every team right now, there's so many teams in that mix for that final wild card spot. The team that wins 15 out of 20 is going to be right there. So obviously they believe that they can be one of those teams. Well,
seeing Jimenez pitch well is one thing, but the pitching's been the real problem here. And I know, for the Royals, the bats have awakened. That's the first thing you notice is they were not hitting the ball earlier in the year. They're tearing the cover off the ball right now. Then you add in a Melky Cabrera. On your side of the fence, look, I looked at the Royals the last 2 years. They won one and they came close to winning another one. And, it'll flatten out here a little bit. And I really did believe this thing was going the wrong way. And I really did believe that they would have been bad enough to sell off. It looked like it was headed that way. Now it looks like you better watch out for them come October. You probably don't want to, find yourself in Kansas City for Game 3 tied or something like that, right?
No, absolutely not. The core of this group, has been through so much, starting, way back in 2013 when they had their first winning season in 10 years and then their first playoff spot in 29 years and their first, World Series championship in 30 years. And they've won so many big games. So I think that's what persuaded the front office to just, stand down and just, let this core group have one more final chance at a playoff run. And they did have a rough start. They were 10-20 at one point. And since June 1st, they've had actually the best record, I believe, in baseball, even better than the Astros. So they have offensively, they've come together. They flipped the batting order, moved Whit Merrifield to the top spot, and adding Cabrera, of course, just lengthens that lineup even a little bit more. And they've really been terrific offensively. Their bullpen has been fantastic too, and they added a bunch of pieces before the trade deadline from San Diego. Brandon Maurer, Ryan Buchter, 2 power arms. So they've added depth there, and they're really set up pretty well for a run to certainly make the postseason. They're 2 games out of first as of Monday night, and 2.5 games ahead in the wild card spot. So they're sitting pretty good right now.
Well, Jeff, this turnaround, is it shocking to you having sat and watched them sort of have a malaise last year and certainly a malaise in the early part of this year?
Not really. Last year, really injuries just caught up with them. They just couldn't contend with all the injuries, and the final one was they lost Lorenzo Cain for the final 6 weeks, and he's sort of the guy that makes this team go. And when they lost him, they just sort of ran out of steam down the stretch. They had a terrific August, but they just couldn't sustain it in September. Still finished 500, which is kind of amazing considering how many injuries they did have. But this year, just a slow start. They weren't hitting in April, and they weren't hitting for most of May. But once they came together offensively, the rotation's been pretty good. The bullpen's been great, as I mentioned. The defense is always good with Kansas City, and they've just put it together. And on a pretty good roll right now.
Isn't it nice when a kid like Whit Merrifield winds up blossoming? Yeah. I mean, we're seeing that here with Scope. We're feeling it to some degree with Mancini. The difference is when you're giving all the money to Davis and you're giving all the money to Trumbo and Hardy, and when those guys don't produce, that's when things get sort of haywire. And you guys went through that a little bit with Moustakas and Kane not being there, and Hosmer's obviously having a great campaign again, but they're all out earning money at this point. But when the young guys come on, that really does make a difference, because you really couldn't count on him coming off of last year, know exactly what you're getting. But this is heading in the right direction for him as an all-star.
Well, absolutely. And when you're a small market team, you need to have finds like that. He's a late bloomer. 28 years old. Lorenzo Cain was a lot like that, actually, another late bloomer. And you get guys like that, and they have big years, and like you mentioned, they don't make a lot of money, so it's easy on the payroll. He's been a terrific find. That second base spot's been a giant hole for them for a long, long time. They had one good year out of Omar Infante in 14.
Where's Frank White when you need him? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
right?
It's just him. I mean, it's really been pretty bad at that position. I'll go back to the early 90s. Chico Lean was a guy who filled in for a couple of good years. But, since then, it's just been a terrible position for them. And to have a kid like Whit Merrifield, who's been more of a super utility guy in his career, but he has really blossomed at second base now. Every day that he plays there, he gets better defensively, and he's been a real spark plug at the top of the order.
Dude, I love having guys like you on that are just name-dropping Chico Lean, who was on my Stratomatic team, back then. That was pre-rotisserie, and I'm too old to have any fantasy anything at this point. I have my fantasy teams. They're the Orioles and the Ravens, and the Orioles are a fantasy right now to us. I mean, the Machado thing, in general, both of these franchises, and look, man, I'm not going to play that foolish lie that the Orioles are a small market team. I mean, they've been raking in the money off of Masson, taking the money off the Nationals deal. They've spent more money, some of it wisely, some of it not so wisely. And you watch Jimenez and you've seen where this Chris Davis thing is headed, which isn't good. But just on a strategy side here, both of these franchises are at the end of a term, and the term in Kansas City has been much happier and has netted the parade and all that. But then the bill comes, and it's going to be incredibly interesting just to see how the soap opera plays out and how far Kansas City takes it this year. But no matter win, lose, or draw, what happens to the Hosmers and the Moustakases and the Canes, and what will they garner out in the marketplace? And I think we learned something over the weekend. Boy, hitting's not as valued as pitching right now. Like, if you're going to give me guaranteed pitching, I'm much more apt to pay for that than I am to pay for another Chris Davis in the marketplace right now.
Yeah, I think there's a national perception that of the big six free agents that they have, that they're not going to re-sign any of them, and that's just bogus. They have a pretty good track record of re-signing their own guys. I'm not saying they know they're not going to get all six, but I would suspect they would get at least two, maybe even three. They've committed to about $88 million in payroll next year, so that leaves about 60 or maybe even 70 because the payroll keeps going up. $70 million to sign a couple of these guys. So, whether it's Derek Hosmer or Mike Moustakas or Kane or Escobar or Jason Vargas, I think Dayton Moore has got a good track record. He'll do whatever he can to sign at least two of them back and maybe even get half of them back. And, it's not like they're going to just tear this thing down and start over. They've got some long-term deals, Ian Kennedy, Salvador Perez, Danny Duffy, of course, and they're not in a position to just start over because of a couple reasons. Actually, number one, they can't afford the attendance drop and how much that would be financially if they just tore it up and had a 90-loss season. And another thing is their television contract comes up after 19, so you've got to be attractive to potential suitors in that area. So I suspect that there may be a little bit of drop off next year, but I think they'll still be competitive.
Always love talking baseball with Jeffrey Flanagan. You can follow his journey, and tens of thousands do, on Twitter at FlannyMLB. He covers the Royals as their beat reporter for MLB and Royals.com. He is in Baltimore this week, as are the surging, at least until they got here, Kansas City Royals. You talk about how much money it will take, and it's absurd to think none of these guys will be back. Boy, the Phillies, offer this incredible cautionary tale, and so would maybe the San Francisco Giants, who I know have fallen apart, but they weren't the ones stuck with the Pablo Sandoval contract. That was the Red Sox. That, there's pitfalls down every one of these turns when you win and how far you go in, and you're not paying for what a guy did in 2014 and 2020 and 21, but it will be interesting to see whether Hosmer gets 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, whether it's $20 million a year, $30 million a year, $18 million a year, and the same thing could be said for all of these guys. And Moustakas has gone into deep holes at various points in his career where you could envision him hitting 198 again at some point, and you wouldn't want to be the one paying him $19 million a year to do that. And it is tough for the fan base. No one in San Francisco wanted to see Sandoval leave. Now they're all happy he's gone, right? And every franchise goes through this. It's a lot nicer to have had the memories of the parade and that mess you guys created on the freeway that day in that sea of blue than to have not had that. But, there's a cautionary tale for all of these franchises. And look, the Orioles are going to go through that right now with how much to give Scope, whether he'll take it, where does Machado figure into this. And I think, of all the stories with the Orioles, Machado not being dealt before the deadline and the notion that he's just going to be gone in 16 months, that you have 600 or 700 at-bats left with him in an Oriole uniform, that's threatening for all of these franchises, whether they've won or haven't won.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you got to kind of, as a front office, you have to determine if the player's an ascending player or descending player. And I think with the Royals, they've got guys like a Moustakas, who I view as an ascending player. He's gotten better. He was hurt last year, of course, but he's gotten better every year. And now he's got 30 home runs. He's going to threaten the club record of 36. Eric Hosmer, and both those guys play excellent defense too, which also factors into it if you play for the Kansas City Royals. Hosmer's having certainly a career year, hitting over 320, 16 home runs already, and plays Gold Glove defense. So, they're going to command some major moolah on the market. There's no doubt about that. It comes down to whether they think about giving the old hometown discount to Dayton Moore and the Royals, and that's certainly a possibility. I think some of those guys would really like to play their entire career in Kansas City. So we'll have to see what happens. I'm sure both of those guys will get qualifying offers, and so the worst case scenario is the Royals would likely get a draft pick and use that to build for the future. But I think their first priority is to get them back in Royal Blue.
Jeff, do you love what they've done the last couple of months, not just on the field, but then augmenting? I mean, making that sort of commitment to say, hey, the old guys, we won once, we still want to win again, and then we'll negotiate. But not just that we're going all in, the deals that they've actually made that have plugged holes and have taken pretty good care of them. I mean, I go back to April and May and even early June. I don't even know at the All-Star break I was thinking like they would be on the par with a Red Sox or even a Yankees team. It's certainly not the Astros and the Indians, who were, had the most talent during the offseason, injuries aside. I feel like now I look at the Royals and I look at the bullpen and I look at what they've done in their pedigree, and, I don't know what Vegas has them at, but I'm sure Vegas has them sort of paralleled at this point.
I tell you what, if I was someone else, I wouldn't want to play them in a playoff series because they have the ability. They also have 31 comeback wins this year, which leads the major. So they have this feeling, and they had it in 14 and they had it in 15, that they're never out of a game. And you have to get all 27 outs against them. They just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. And that's kind of how they were built, and that's how they played in their 2 World Series years. And they did augment their staff, certainly with the deal they had with the Padres. And I think the big thing too is they didn't really give up much in either one of those deals. Probably the biggest give up was getting Cabrera for a 2nd-round pick and right-hander A.J. Puckett. But these are minor leaguers, and how many prospects actually ever make the major leagues consistently? I think it's like 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 6. So it's not a big risk for them. So I thought both deals will help them now and will not mortgage the future. They still kept all of their top prospects, and they're still set up for a pretty long run.
Well, and in measuring yourself against the other teams, the measurement's always going to be Cleveland there. And as much as the Orioles fans really have bad mojo in regard to the Royals, the Orioles fans hate the Royals, sort of on a par with the Yankees and the Red Sox, and 4-game sweeps in the ALCS will do that. I'm still scarred by the Oakland A's from 73 and 74, Jeff. So, and certainly the Pittsburgh Pirates in 79, I've never had a kind word for them. So I understand how it works when you lose, but, that rivalry's percolating there between Cleveland and Kansas City, and it's been back and forth, and I think it's going to get a little zesty with these meetings coming up in the coming weeks.
Yeah, they're going to play each other a lot, and I was thinking about this the other day too. I think for both the Indians and both the Royals, because Detroit, Chicago, and Minnesota clearly have sent up the white flag, and they all traded their closers, and they're trying to they traded a lot of their players, and so really the division's going to come down to who can hold serve against those three teams that have already tanked it. If you lose, like the White Sox beat the Indians on Sunday, and it was in the Royals clubhouse, and one of the players turned to me and goes, "Well, they just had their serve broken." So it's like you can't lose to those teams. It's going to be very important, of course, when they go head to head. But the division's going to really come down to those 18 to 20 games you have against the three teams below you. You've got to, I think, win 80-90% of those games, or you're going to be in trouble.
Very active trading deadline. A lot of rumors and this and that, and the Britton thing for us. He stayed put. Certainly, him going to Cleveland would have changed the effect for the Royals, right? But the Yankees and the Dodgers. I mean, it feels like 1977, 78 all over again now, doesn't it?
Yeah, they get whatever they want, don't they? It must be fun to have that type of payroll, but sometimes that can come back to bite you too. You end up, with a lot of wasted money, and I guess that doesn't really matter to the big market teams, but. I think I was talking to a scout the other day about that, because it's sometimes an advantage to have a small market payroll, because you're not forced into making these colossal errors. You just can't afford it. So, but I do think that, pound for pound, I think the Royals did pretty good before the trade deadline.
He is Jeffrey Flanagan, Flanny MLB. He is in Baltimore. You can follow him out on Twitter. He covers all things Royals, and he will be very, very busy here heading to the finish line. You did a lot of Chiefs stuff as well. You missed training camp this time of the year, or you real happy on the baseball thing?
I've been mostly baseball, 90% baseball, so I did a little bit of Chiefs, but no, I don't miss those 100 two-a-days in August for sure.
Hey, I'm here talking about Colin Kaepernick and Joe Flacco a week later. So it's welcome to Baltimore. What can I say? Flanny, always great to have you on. Always great to have a visit, and make the barbecue good for me when I get out there, okay?
Sounds good.
Kansas City, here he goes. He is Jeffrey Flanagan, Flanny MLB, out on Twitter. You can find me in the Buy a Toyota audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. You can always email me, nasty@WNST.net as well. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We're headed to London next month. I'm putting some parties together for that. We've had some fun around here with my Dundalk High Athletic Hall of Fame nomination. That's going to be on October 20th as well. So if you're a Dundalkian, I salute you. Old Al's giving a hoot. I'll get you some more information on that. We're looking to do a hoot nanny. I just came up with that. Clever, right? I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.